Hello, I'm Rebecca Pigram, Public Information Officer for Rockingham County. Today, we're outside the Rockingham County 911 Center where we will learn all about what happens when you at home call 911 and see how that call relates to our first responders. We are talking with Rodney Cates, Emergency Services 911 Director. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Thank you. Good. Thank you for joining us today. Can you explain to the folks at home just a little bit about who you are and your duties in Rockingham County?
Okay, I'm the Emergency Services Director for Rockingham County. And in that role, I oversee the 911 operation, EMS, the Fire Marshal's Office, and Emergency Management. Now, each of those divisions have a division leader. So I oversee those division leaders, but I do have overall oversight of all four of those divisions of emergency services.
Perfect. And how long have you been in Rockingham County?
I came to Rockingham County in June of 2016.
Nice. And do you want to touch a little bit on your background and like what you've done prior to Rockingham County?
I came from the law enforcement background. I was a graduate of the 86 Basic Highway Patrol School with North Carolina State Highway Patrol. Migrated through the ranks, finished my career as a District First Sergeant over Orange and Alamance County. Then I went to Orange County Emergency Services as an instructor and a telecommunicator, and I taught at telecommunicators there. I taught in service school. I taught a lot of officer survival, officer safety type schools to a lot of people that had to deal with the events in Chapel Hill, the Halloween events and the National Championship nights. So I did a lot of instructing there. I got an opportunity to go down to the beach to Carteret County, and I became the 911 Director for Carteret County, and I stayed there for 5 years until I came back here to Rockingham County, and this is close to home for me, so I call it coming back home.
Perfect. So now that we know a little bit about you, let's head inside and talk about our first responders. You know, obviously you're all about public safety here in Rockingham County, so let's head inside the 911 center and we'll get to know all of the steps when someone calls 911 in Rockingham County, and we'll kind of discuss and see what happens.
Sounds good.
Cool.
All right. Good.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so when we walk in the 911 center, the first thing we see is this office. It's this kind of like almost a lobby space. Can you explain what's going on in this area?
It is. This is kind of our administrative area. My office stays here. I chose to stay close to the 911 center so I can always hear what's going on and have updated information. Within this also is our database manager and our PSAP manager, who works within this office as well as our training and quality assurance manager. A lot of times people hear 911 centers referred to as PSAPs, which is PSAP, which is Public Service Access Point. And what that means is that's one point that the public can call to get the access to what they need. So that's why 911 centers are referred to as PSAPs.
So when folks at home call the non-emergency 911 number, it's obviously not 911, does that go into the call center or does that go to Jason Wood?
That goes into the call center as well, and it's perfectly fine to do that. If they have questions or want to talk about something that's not of an emergent nature, then they're more than welcome to call the non-emergent number, and the telecommunicators inside the center will answer those calls.
Perfect, because we know that not everything is a 911 emergency, and we want to make sure that we don't clog up non-emergency calls with those emergency lines. Okay, so now we're right outside the 911 call center, the actual center where folks at home, when they dial 911, this is where those phone calls are. That's where they lead into. So can we explain just a little bit about those 911 operators? I know we've got this awesome sign, and we've talked about it before, personally, you and I, but please explain at home, for the folks at home, just exactly the importance of our dispatchers.
The 911 telecommunicators are the hub of the activation of all the other resources that people see. When people see a police car arriving on a scene, or a fire truck, or an EMS unit, or a rescue squad, all of that is prompted, all of that is generated from the 911 center. The 911 call is placed by the citizen. There are steps that the 911 telecommunicator goes through to verify information and to get the address. They put what's called a nature code into the call. And once that happens, that call is ready to be dispatched. And once that call is dispatched, then it activates the police cars and the fire trucks and the EMS units. And what the telecommunicators then continue to do, they utilize emergency dispatch protocols, and they're trained in the use of these protocols. And what that does, it lets them gather more information from the caller. It does not delay the process at all because units have already been dispatched. But they continue to gather this information so they can, as they're trained, they paint a mental picture of what these responders are going to. So as best they can, from the information that they're getting from these callers, they're trying to paint a mental picture through the notes that they're putting in the call for service and the CAD and the information they're broadcasting to these units. They're painting a mental picture of exactly what you're going to. So if it's a CPR call, someone witnesses someone have a cardiac arrest and they fall to the ground. If it occurs in a parking lot, through the information these telecommunicators are gathering, number one, they automatically are sending first responders, they're sending EMS, usually law enforcement to assist even with traffic or bystanders, but they're finding out what aisle they are in, what car are they close to, what's the color of that car. Has CPR begun? Have private citizens started CPR? What does the patient look like? Are they responding to CPR? Because all of that information prompts the responders, and as they're responding in their mind, they're getting their game plan together. And they're saying, when I get on scene, what tools do I need to help mitigate this situation? And it doesn't matter if it's a CPR, if it's a structure fire, if it's a motor vehicle collision, if it's an armed robbery in progress. All of this information lets these responders prepare for what they have to do once they arrive on scene. And all of that information is prompted and generated from a 911 center.
So personally, that's insane. These people, I mean, we've talked about it and we discussed that, you know, our 911 dispatchers are truly the first responders. So in short, basically every person that calls in Rockingham County 911 and even the non-emergency line, it comes into this center, and these folks are the ones that are telling our first responders, our firemen, our rescue squads, our police, our sheriff's department, the police departments and that kind of thing. They're saying, hey, this is what's going on. This is how you get there. This is what you should expect. That way, those responders aren't digging through their medical bags for, you know, an EpiPen for a heart attack.
Exactly. It lets them get their game plan ready prior to arriving on scene. And the technology we have now, most of the resources that we dispatch have mobile computer terminals in their trucks, vehicles, cars, whatever the ambulances do, the police cars do. So they actually can see the notes that they're populating inside the 911 center are then transferring to these field units, so they actually can read these notes real time while they're en route to this call.
Wow. Technology, it's a wonderful thing, especially when lives are in trouble, at stake, exactly. Now that we're inside the 911 call center, can you kind of direct like what each station does, who's responsible for what inside, and maybe discuss all of the screens and that kind of thing that we've seen?
So within the center, every position has its own designation. So every person that's sitting at one of these dispatch consoles is responsible for EMS. One is responsible for the sheriff's department. One is responsible for police departments. One's responsible for fire. So every console has its own designation. Anybody in here can answer a telephone call at any time. This is what's called a vertical dispatch center, which means that our people, we don't have designated call takers. We have people that answer the telephone and they dispatch calls. When they answer to the telephone, they're going to capture really three main pieces of information. They're going to ask the caller what's their address. They're going to ask them to verify the address because that's a standard. It's not that we didn't hear the address or we didn't capture it. It's standard for the caller to say, hey, jog my memory, am I technically at this address? Because sometimes in a crisis situation, we revert back to what's most commonly known to us. So they verify the address, and once the address is verified, they put in what's called a nature code. Once that nature code is entered into the CAD, or these dispatch centers are called CADs, or computer assisted dispatch. Once that nature code goes into the CAD, it drops into what's called a dispatch queue, and the call is dispatched at that time. For our center annually, last year, we had a 41-second average dispatch time, which is outstanding. I would compare that to anybody in the state, I think that ranks, if not at the top, they're very near the top of the state statistics. So once that is dispatched, if a person's working EMS and that call pops into the open dispatch queue. They look at it and they say, this is an EMS call. I'm responsible for EMS today. I need to dispatch this out. Likewise, if it's a sheriff's department call, they look at it and they say, my responsibility today is the sheriff's department. That's what I'm assigned, so I dispatch it out. So all of that occurs from the time the 911 line rings, address, verify the address, tell me exactly what's going on, enter a nature code, takes 41 seconds, and that call is dispatched.
That is insane.
That's great.
You literally showed me on your hands 5 things that occur in 41 seconds.
41 seconds.
And it's not just that is critical information.
Yes.
And potentially life-saving information that goes through several different operations in 41 seconds.
It does, and the reason we do it that way, every center does not do that's called fast-track dispatching. Every 911 center does not do fast-track dispatching, but we have proven time and time again that fast-track dispatching saves lives. It gets resources started that way. We can speed them up and make them go faster and send more resources, or we can slow them down and say, hey, this is not as bad as we thought, you're not needed. But at least we have those resources activated and dedicated to that call to assist in the mitigation of that situation.
First of all, 41 seconds is phenomenal to answer those 5 questions and get that out. Okay, 41 seconds. After that 41 seconds is up, and after that initial dispatch to whatever call it is, what happens after that 41 second?
So once that happens, once the call is dispatched, our telecommunicators, and again by training, all of these people are certified the exact same way. We're certified through the International Academy of Emergency Dispatch. Their teaching tells them to give a reassuring statement, and they say, my coworker has already dispatched units. I'm going to ask you some more questions, but these questions do not delay the process. At that point, they go through the questioning that's in the emergency dispatch protocol. And we do protocols for emergency police, emergency fire, and emergency medical. And what those questions do, they ask of the caller, help me paint a mental picture. For a medical call, they'll say, how old is the patient? Is the patient breathing? Is the patient turning blue? Does the patient take medication? What medications have they taken, and when have they taken those medications? Again, as we talked about earlier, painting that mental picture for the EMS crews and the first responders when they get there to know what to expect of the patient when they arrive on scene.
Now that we've got that information from the callers, and we are getting that information and we have sent it out to our first responders, can you talk about the process? Because obviously all of this has to happen very quickly. Let's talk about that simultaneous communication between our 911 center, our dispatchers, our telecommunicators, and the folks that are in, the EMTs, the paramedics, the sheriff's department, the firefighters.
So technology now really puts us in a very good position. A lot of the resources that we dispatch to have mobile computer terminals. So all of the information that we're inputting into the CAD, or the computer assisted dispatch, is automatically transferring to these mobile computer terminals. So the responders have to see it and read it. There are times that they don't have time to read it. There may be a law enforcement call. It could be an armed robbery, and they want to hear that information. We need to get that information out so that for situational awareness, all the other officers and agencies can hear it too. So for the telecommunicators, once they dispatch this call, whether it's through a computer terminal or through the radio, they then begin to track these resources. So if it's an armed robbery and they're sending 6 reasonable police officers to this armed robbery, once these reasonable police officers hear this call, they acknowledge it over the radio. They give their call number and they say that I'm en route. So the telecommunicator then has to attach these units to the call for service, which shows the time they're en route. Again, timing is critical because it timestamps it. The minute that unit says that they're en route and we put it into the computer system, it's a timestamp that would show this reasonable police officer was en route to this call at this specific time, all the way down to the seconds. So it's critical to get those times as accurately as they can be. Then they get on scene, and we have to, again, check them on scene and show that they have arrived on scene for that call. During that process, they are giving them information where the suspect is. Does he have a weapon? What does the weapon look like? Where's the suspect at this time? He just left. He ran out the side door to the rear of the building toward Freeway Drive. So there's, again, painting that mental picture. It continues the entire process of the call. And telecommunicators, again, are responsible for that third component They answer the call, they enter it into the CAD, they dispatch the call, and then they continue to monitor the units and update the units as to exactly what's going on.
Wow. And that's all done from this center right here.
Right here, yep. We have a staff of 28 people and 3 administrators, so technically, and the administrators are trained as telecommunicators as well. So technically, we have a staff of 31 people that make all of that happen.
Wow. No wonder you decided to keep your office literally within
arm's reach.
Yeah, literally within arm's reach.
Yes.
So you can, if something goes crazy or if your staff needs help, you're right here. You literally can jump on a CAD, like you said, and help in any way that you can.
That's correct. Which
is true leadership. You're not asking your people anything that you wouldn't do.
And all of our staff do that. All of our administrators jump in here, them more so than I, but all of our staff are trained, and we certainly jump in here and help when we can and when it's needed, and it's a team effort.
Absolutely.
All of them emergency situations are mitigated through team efforts. It doesn't matter how big or how small they are, it takes a team to do it, and that's how we operate.
That's awesome. Well, Cates, thank you so much again for giving us this tour. You've really educated me, and I hope you've educated the folks at home about just what goes on in this 911 center. Like you said, our telecommunicators are the first responders. When folks at home dial 911, these are the people that talk to them first in those crisis situations. So thank you so much for shedding some light on that. I hope Rodney, Cates, and I have given you guys at home a little information and shed some light on what happens here in the 911 center. If you at home have any questions about what's going on in Rockingham County, either in the 911 center or just Rockingham County questions in general, please feel free to give me a call, Rebecca Pickram, Public Information Officer for Rockingham County. You can reach me at 336-589-0967.